subject. So thank you for being here for these presentations. As usual in the Swiss Press Club, I would ask you to, all our guests, to sign our golden book. Just bring a signature on the book. Just a signature, please. And before to give the floor to Dr. Maha, I will take the opportunity to give the floor to Mr. Mohammed Kamel, Secretary General of the Egyptian Revolutionary Council, for a few introducing words. So thanks a lot. Mr. Kamel, please.
Thank you, Mr. Madan. Bonjour, Mesdames et Messieurs. Bienvenue à notre conférence de presse. La conférence s'est déroulée en anglais et arabe aujourd'hui. أهلا بحضراتكم في المؤتمر الصحفي. المؤتمر يعقد اليوم باللغة الإنجليزية والعربية، ولكننا لا نستطيع أن نبدأ مؤتمرنا اليوم دون الإشارة إلى قرار ترامب حول القدس، ونعتبره فرصة ذهبية للشعوب العربية كي تتحد وتطلق ثورتها الكبرى التي تبدأ بإسقاط حكوماتها المتسلطة كأول طريق للنصر العربي الشامل. On our topic of the conference today, most of the world government intentionally ignore that Egypt is being ruled by a brutal military junta, took power over the tanks and over the bodies of thousands of innocent citizens. All their crime is rejecting a setback of their revolution and their democratic process. We are here today, approaching the International Human Rights Day, to tell the world the ugly reality of what is taking place in the land of Tahrir Square. We are honored today to receive our 5 guests to address this sad reality. Mr. علاء, المنصف, head of the Swiss Organization for the Protecting of Human Rights. Mr. توبي, Kádman, international human rights law expert and the co-founder of the Generic 37. Mr. Abul Maati Sandubi, journalist. Mr. Abdurrahman Az, political activist and journalist. Mr. Ibrahim Halawa, a young Irish Egyptian who has been in captivity in Egypt prison. Our guest speakers, who do not represent a particular ideology nor a specific political party or a group, are going to address us in this conference, hosted in Geneva Club Press. That conference will be chaired by Dr. Azam, the head of the Egyptian Revolutionary Council. The Egyptian Revolutionary Council is an organization that has brought together Egyptian citizens and movement that share in common a belief in the principle of the January 25th revolution, irrespective of their political view, to work together to bring an end to the military regime and to work to establish a democratic and civil state that uphold the rule of law and respect human rights. We believe in working for the political and economical prosperity of the Egyptian people, a prosperity that cannot be achieved under this kind of dictatorship, tyranny, and corruption that manifests itself through the current regime in Egypt. Before giving the floor to Dr. Azam to chair the conference to start, we would like to present you a 2-minute Human Rights Watch movie. Thank you.
I was leaving university when I was arrested. They threw me inside the car. We went to the police station. They stripped me blindfolded me and cuffed my hands behind my back. They started hitting me with a wooden stick. In the middle of the torture on the first day, they said, "You're going to confess on camera." Then they started the torture party. They started electrocuting me. Of course, I kind of lost consciousness. And every time they wake you up, they electrocute you again. They handcuffed me from behind and hung me from a door. My shoulders felt like they were coming out. He put pliers on my nail and pulled my nail out from its roots. I could see the flesh inside. They sexually assaulted me with their hands. Then they put a stick in me. They said, "You think you're a man? Now look at what we're doing to you." The third day was the grill party. They brought a stick and hung me upside down, and then they started electrocuting me everywhere. I said, "I'll tell you whatever you want me to say." I stayed in this police station for 46 days. No matter how much I tell you, I will not be able to give you a full idea of what happened.
Conference on human rights violations in Egypt, the uncomfortable truth, and on this occasion it is important that we open the conference with a couple of words regarding what has happened in regard to the US decision to move its embassy to Jerusalem. We condemn in the strongest terms this violation of the rights of the peoples of the region, the rights of the Palestinian people. The decision by President Trump is one that is dangerous and one that is not in keeping with the international law, and it is not in keeping with the rights of the citizens of Palestine. What we are seeing is a move that has come at a time when there are Jewish settlements in Palestine, continuing violations of Palestinian rights, and there is no justice for the Palestinians. The cause of Jerusalem is a cause that goes beyond the Palestinians. It affects all Arabs and Muslims. It is a city that is at the very heart of stability and peace in the region. We therefore condemn in the strongest possible terms the decision that has been taken, and we urge all free-loving people to stand against this decision, and we put full responsibility on the governments and regimes of the region, the Arab regimes that have allowed this to happen, despite their condemnation, despite their words. Their weakness has allowed President Trump to make this move, and we therefore urge the peoples of the region to stand up for their rights. Thank you very much. Let me now proceed to open the conference officially, the proceedings of the conference. But before I hand over to our distinguished panel, I'd like to say just a few words about the situation in Egypt as an introduction. The continuing violations in Egypt that have called upon us to hold this conference today is due to not only the continuing violations, but the very fact that these violations are systematic and premeditated and happen with the knowledge of those in the highest authority of the state, from the president to those who are in positions of authority. General Sisi and his security forces and his tool now, which is the legal system, the judiciary of Egypt, all function in order to enforce the military state's decisions, which are not in keeping with any kind of respect for the rule of law or human rights. What we are seeing in Egypt today is the establishment of one of the most tyrannical systems in the world. What is happening today in Egypt requires the international community, the United Nations Human Rights Council, and the United Nations Commissioner to stand up to what is happening and to take speedy action in order to stand up against the human rights violations happening in the prisons of Egypt, the disappearances, the rape of men and women, the arbitrary detention of thousands. Now we are talking about over 60,000 political prisoners that come from all walks of life. Students, lawyers, doctors, elected members of parliament, and the elected president of Egypt, Dr. Mohammed Morsi. As we gather here today in Geneva, the press conference is only the beginning of various steps we are going to take while we are here in Geneva, and we want to shed light on the predicament that we face as citizens of the world and as citizens of Egypt as to the level of abuse that is happening and to which the international community has remained silent. All Egyptian citizens now are in danger because the Egyptian regime does not distinguish between ideologies. It does not differentiate between men and women. It is out to quell all voices that speak out, and it is now endangering the life of the elected president as well. And we want to shed light on the fact that President Morsi today in detention is suffering diabetic comas. He is losing his eyesight, and he is existing in conditions that can be described as a slow and systematic death that is being pursued by the military regime. All official bodies of the United Nations need to speak out. We, as citizens of the world, need to speak out against these violations loudly and to ensure that action is taken swiftly. Thank you very much indeed. Let me now turn to our first speaker, Ustaz Alaء. تفضل حضرتك.
صباح الخير. أولا أشكر جميع القائمين على هذا المؤتمر الصحفي لما يقدموه للقضية المصرية وللمجتمع المصري وللمواطن المصري بصفة خاصة فيما يتعلق بحقوقه سواء السياسية والاقتصادية والاجتماعية التي نسعى جميعا أن تكون في مرمى ومسمع ومرأى المواطن المصري لينظر إليها نظرة حقيقية فيتمتع بها من باب أنها حق أصيل له وليس منحة من قبل السلطات. بالتأكيد أكرر قبل أن نبدأ في أي حديث عن الحالة الحقوقية في مصر يجب أن نذكر الحالة الحقوقية في القدس وما يتعرضون له من انتهاكات، آخرها ما يتعلق بقرار الرئيس الأمريكي دونالد ترامب والذي يعد انتهاك صارخ وتحدي صارخ للقوانين والمواثيق الدولية وقرارات الأمم المتحدة التي تسعى إلى فرض حالة سلام، ولكن للأسف الإجراءات التي تقوم بها السلطات الأمريكية وآخرها القرار الذي صدر بالأمس يقول لنا أننا أمام تقويض لعملية وفكرة ما يسمى بالسلام ما بين الدولتين، وهذا أمر خطير. وبالتأكيد يجب أن قبل أن نبدأ في أي حديث أن نتحدث عن هذه الحالة ونندد بها. بالنسبة للوضع الحقوقي في مصر وما يتعرض له المواطنون من انتهاكات في الحقوق السياسية أو الاقتصادية أو الاجتماعية، نحن ندعي كمنظمات حقوقية أن هناك انتهاكات، والسلطات في مصر تدعي أنه لا توجد تلك الانتهاكات وأن هذه افتراءات من قبل المنظمات الحقوقية. وما بين كلامنا وكلام الأنظمة التطبيق الواقعي المرسوم والمنفذ من قبل السلطات في مصر. عندما ننظر إلى أي انتهاكات في دولة ما ننظر إلى السياسات والقرارات والإجراءات التي تقوم بها هذه السلطات، سواء كانت إجراءات تشريعية أو إجراءات قضائية أو إجراءات تنفيذية. ومن ثم نستطيع بعد النظر لتلك الحالات والقرارات والسياسات اعتبار ما إذا كانت هذه الانتهاكات هي جرائم نظام، جرائم ممنهجة واسعة الانتشار تابعة لسياسة نظام أم لا. نحن نتحدث منذ 3/7/2013 حتى يومنا هذا عن منهجية، ليست أخطاء وليست انتهاكات فردية. نحن نتحدث عن منهجية في الانتهاكات والجرائم التي تتم، وبالتالي مسألة هذه المنهجية تضعنا أمام هل الجرائم التي تتم سواء بالأرقام الموثقة الثابتة التي أرسلت إلى الجهات سواء المعنية محليا أو المعنية في المجتمع الدولي كالأمم المتحدة واللجنة الإفريقية والإجراءات المنبعثة منها، هل هي تصب في مسألة أن الجرائم في مصر أصبحت ممنهجة أم لا؟ نحن نتحدث عن حالات بعينها. لو تحدثنا مثلا عن الاختفاء القسري، نحن نتحدث عن عدد أكثر من 2782 حالة اختفاء قسري حتى وقتنا هذا، منهم كمنظمة السويسرية يعني وثقتها 32 حالة لم تظهر حتى الآن. نحن نتحدث عن توثيقات أخرى، هناك أعداد أكبر من ذلك لدى منظمات أخرى. نحن نتحدث عن الموثق لدى المنظمة وكثير من المنظمات. نحن نتحدث عن 32 حالة لم تظهر حتى الآن، وتعرض 2782 مواطن مصري للاختفاء القسري. هذا الإجراء الذي يتعلق بالاختفاء القسري مثلا هو إجراء ممنهج شهدناه في تصاعد مستمر، لم يخلو شهر مر على مصر منذ 3/7 حتى وقتنا هذا 3/7/2013 إلا وهناك حالات اختفاء قسري موثقة تم توثيقها بشكل كامل، وهناك بعض الحالات منها نالت تصفية جسدية للأسف الشديد. عندما نتحدث عن التعذيب نتحدث عن أكثر من 462 حالة تعذيب تعرض للقتل، سواء تعذيب مباشر أو تعرض للقتل بالإهمال الطبي الذي هو نوع من أنواع التعذيب. لا أتحدث عن مجموع التعذيب بأكمله، أتحدث عن تعذيب وصل بالقتل إلى 462 حالة. ده بخصوص السلطة التنفيذية. النظر إلى السلطة التشريعية والإجراءات التي قامت بها السلطات التشريعية في مصر مرت بمراحل مريبة في التعامل مع القضايا التي تنتهك معايير المحاكمات العادلة وتطعن في سير الإجراءات. لدينا 4 محطات انتقلت فيها الإجراءات في مصر. بداية كان القرار بقانون من المستشار عدلي منصور بمد الحبس الاحتياطي في الجرائم التي عقوبتها الإعدام أو المؤبد لأكثر من 2 سنين. كان النظام القديم أو القانون القديم يحدد بحد أقصى 2 سنين. فتح هذا الأمر كان أولى الخطوات في منهجية تعامل السلطة القضائية والسلطة التشريعية في حالة حقوق الإنسان في مصر. وبالتالي هناك الآلاف، ومنهم يعني على سبيل المثال موجود معنا أستاذ إبراهيم قعد 4 سنوات حبس احتياطي، صح؟ وبالتالي تحول الحبس الاحتياطي الذي هو أداة قانونية إلى عقوبة. وهنا الانتهاك الأول أو المنهجية الأولى في تعامل السلطة التشريعية والسلطة القضائية مع حالة حقوق الإنسان في مصر. ثم ما لبث أن أصدرت السلطة التنفيذية قرار مع السلطة القضائية بإنشاء دوائر الإرهاب، وهي في حد ذاتها مخالفة للقانون لاختيار قضاة معينين لمباشرة قضايا معينة. فهذا انتهاك تطور أو التطور الثاني في الإجراء القضائي والتشريعي في مصر. عندما تذهب جميع الأحكام أو أغلب الأحكام الصادرة من دوائر الإرهاب إلى محكمة النقد المصرية يتم نقد وقبول الطعن في هذه القضية، وبالتالي التجأ النظام في مصر إلى المحطة الثالثة وهي إصدار القانون 136 لسنة 2014 الخاص بإحالة المدنيين للمحاكمات العسكرية إذا تعلق الأمر بمنشآت حيوية في مصر، وهو ما أحيل أكثر من 7654 على الأقل مواطن مصري من 7654 من المحاكمات المدنية طبيعية أمام القاضي الطبيعي وأمام النيابة الطبيعية إلى المحاكم العسكرية والنيابات العسكرية للتحقيق فيها. ونحن نعلم جميعا أن تكوين المحكمة العسكرية هو تعيين من قبل السلطة اللي هي وزارة الدفاع، وبالتالي هم يؤتمرون بأوامرها، ومعايير المحاكمات العادلة في هذه المحاكم منعدمة تماما. وهناك محطة رابعة أخيرة عندما وجد النظام، وإن كان هو مستمر فيه، وجد النظام تضييق أو شجب وتنديد بالمحاكمات العسكرية، التجأ إلى اصطناع قانون إنشاء محاكم أمن الدولة العليا التي هي في الأصل مخالفة للدستور، الذي ينص على أن التقاضي في مصر على درجتين، فمحاكم أمن الدولة العليا طوارئ هي درجة واحدة يحاكم أمامها المتهم، وهو حكم نهائي ينتظر فقط التصديق عليه من رئيس الجمهورية لتنفيذه. ومن ثم نحن نتحدث عن إجراءات نظام الدولة التشريعي والقضائي والتنفيذي فيما يتعلق بالانتهاكات ونظرتهم لحقوق الإنسان. ونحن من التصريحات الرسمية من رأس النظام في مصر عبد الفتاح السيسي ومن وسائل الإعلام التابعة للنظام نستشعر من كلمات صريحة أن حقوق الإنسان طرف فكري. هم يتحدثون عن أن حقوق الإنسان طرف فكري ويرفعون شعار أن مصر تحارب الإرهاب وأنه لا صوت يعلو فوق صوت المعركة، وبالتالي لا حديث عن حقوق الإنسان في الوقت الحالي، وهي تصريحات رسمية ليست حتى استنتاجات من قبل المنظمات الحقوقية. نحن نتحدث عن تصريحات رسمية من وسائل الإعلام أو من لقاءات رسمية مع عبد الفتاح السيسي. هذا الأمر سواء الإجراءات المتعلقة بالسلطة التنفيذية التشريعية القضائية تقول أن سياسة الدولة في مصر تتجه نحو العمل الأمني فقط كأداة وحيدة للتعامل مع المعارضين بشكل خاص وعموم المجتمع المصري في حقوقه الاقتصادية والاجتماعية بشكل عام. وبالتالي واضح من القرارات الأممية التي صدرت، كان آخرها القرار الأممي المتعلق بلجنة مناهضة التعذيب، ومن التقارير الرسمية التي تصدر من المنظمات غير الحكومية العالمية كأمنستي أو الهيومن رايتس ووتش، تتحدث عن أن هناك منهجية في الانتهاكات والجرائم التي تتم، وأن هذه الانتهاكات والجرائم هي واسعة الانتشار، وأن هذه الانتهاكات جميعها هي سياسة دولة بسلطاتها الثلاث التشريعية والتنفيذية والقضائية. وهما يضعنا أمام خطر حقيقي على المجتمع المصري، لأن فكرة الأداة الأمنية أو العقلية الأمنية التي يتعامل بها النظام هي خطر على المجتمع بأكمله، ليس فقط خطر على المعارضين للنظام. يعني ختاما حتى لا أطيل، أنا أتحدث عن منهجية خطيرة في مصر تحتاج إلى وقفة جادة من جميع الجهات السياسية والحقوقية والجهات المعنية سواء المنضمة لها مصر بمواثيق أو الجهات التي تتعاون مع مصر، أن حالة حقوق الإنسان في خطر. هذا الخطر في حالة حقوق الإنسان لا يتعلق فقط بالشخص المتعرض للانتهاك، لأنه سيتعرض للمؤيد، سيتعرض للمنطقة في مصر بشكل كامل، وبالتالي يجب علينا الوقوف في هذه الانتهاكات. وفقط نحن نطالب بإلزام السلطات بتطبيق وتنفيذ القانون والدستور والمواثيق الدولية، لا نطالب بتبرئة أشخاص ولا إدانة أشخاص. نحن نتحدث عن إجراءات غير قانونية لا تتفق والدستور، لا تتفق والقوانين، لا تتفق والمواثيق الدولية، وخصوصا التي صدقت عليها مصر. في هذا المضمار إن رأينا تنفيذ والتزام من قبل السلطات في مصر ستخف الحالة الحقوقية في مصر بشكل كبير. لكن للأسف الشديد جميع الإجراءات التي تتم هي تمشي في عكس ما يريده المواطن أو ما يستحقه المواطن المصري وما يتمتع به من حقوق هي أصيلة لصيقة، ليست منحة ولا تفضلا من أنظمة موجودة. أسف لو كنت أطلت، ولكن أردت أن ألقي نظرة على الحالة الحقوقية بشكل سريع، وأشكركم جزيلا.
شكرا أستاذ علاء، شكرا. طيب حضرتك تحب؟
Yes. In short, first, thank you for the organizers of this conference. We're talking here about rights, human rights that has to be defended in all cases, but we cannot start talking about that without naming the decision of President Trump, who is seemingly forcing a state of peace against all the rules of international law and human rights. This we condemn. The authorities in Egypt have been using different methods, lawmaking or different executive measures to go against the laws and the principles of human rights. We have in Egypt constant and a huge number of breaches of law put in a system. We have about 3,000 forced disappearances which is happening every month. There are some cases of forced disappearances in Egypt. Some lead to formal bodily liquidation, killing. We have torture. We have different types of torture, among which the medical measures taken in wrong way, or failure to take give medical care to the arrested. We have around 500 cases of murder this way until now. The systematic use of these measures against the opposition is really a big problem. We have here with us today Mr. Ibrahim Halawa, who has been for 4 years in custody, and this is a way. His case is giving us an idea about how the judicial is in mascopy with the military and the executive ways of circumventing the rule of law. Civilians are also sent to military courts when the sitting regime have started to send civilians to military court. We have had a very terrible situation. We have about 7,000 cases that went to military courts, and of course, military court means that the body, judicial body, is there as military who are taking orders. So there are no rules of justice in this kind of courts. And when these courts were ridiculed, the government, the present regime, made a new kind of courts, special courts for security cases. These courts have no possibility to there is no way of overruling these courts. Their decisions are definite, and no social and human rights in Egypt are now functioning. We have had the United Nations and major institutions in the like Human Rights Watch and the similar have documented all these breaches of law, and this is dangerous not only for the people who are in opposition. It is a situation where the human rights are not followed, and this is a danger to the whole population, to everybody who can be by somehow accused without any reason. There is also the use of the accusation of terror to circumvent the human rights, and this is something we condemn. This is as far as I can remember all what has been said. Thank you.
Good morning. I'll try to be. Good morning. I'll try to be relatively brief in what I have to say. I'd like to start first of all with a statement that Egypt gave just 2 days ago in the Human Rights Council, supporting a resolution in relation to the Rohingya, when it said that those responsible for crimes committed against the civilians should be held accountable. And I think that's an important statement to make. It's regrettable that it wasn't made in relation to its own actions, but in relation to the actions of another state. But what we're looking at the moment is a deteriorating situation, with crimes being committed on a daily basis. We have heard of disappearances, we have heard of torture, extrajudicial killings on a truly massive scale that has been compared to crimes against humanity, and they are crimes against humanity. And ordinarily we would see such a situation in front of the International Criminal Court. Regrettably, Egypt has refused to ratify the Rome Statute of the International Criminal Court, and so the International Criminal Court has no jurisdiction to deal with these matters, and that is truly regrettable. But I think we have to have some hope that justice will one day find its place, and that those who are responsible for these crimes will be held accountable. We've seen very recently General Ratko Mladic held accountable, receiving life imprisonment for his crimes in Srebrenica, Sarajevo, and around Bosnia-Herzegovina. So we have to hope that the same fate will fall for Sisi and those that surround him, those that are responsible for these crimes. We've also heard that the courts are being used by the military regime, and we see that that is a tool which is being increasingly used by autocratic and dictatorial regimes. For that, let's look back some years. Another regime used judges to target civilians. During the Second World War, the Nazis used the courts and the judges to target Jews. Those judges were put on trial at Nuremberg at the end of the Second World War. So the fact that judges are being used to carry out these sentences by targeting political opponents does not mean that they will escape liability. Those judges that are part of the system can and should be held accountable. And it is important that we stress that. We have seen, I have experienced myself with, over the past few years, this huge deterioration in the rule of law and any prospect of any democracy emerging in Egypt. Ibrahim Halawa will be able to speak about his own experience. I myself also represent two other journalists in Egypt currently who remain in detention 4 years without being tried, who were in Egypt for carrying out their professional obligations as journalists. Shorkan has become one of the most prolific cases because of his own personal situation, the very serious health concerns that he has, and we also have Mahmoud Nabi, who has been in prison for 4 years. Those two cases I will be continuing to raise with the UN Office of the High Commissioner and the Special Procedures this week. But we will also focus on the case of the democratically elected president, Dr. Morsi. And I can say that today our legal team has filed a comprehensive filing with the UN Office of the High Commissioner, particularly the UN Working Group on Arbitrary Detention, the Special Rapporteur on Torture, and the Special Rapporteur on Independence of Judges, and the Special Rapporteur on Freedom of Expression. The situation with Dr. Morsi, as we've already heard from Dr. Azam, is that his health is deteriorating on a daily basis. It has become so serious that it is quite right to say that that treatment constitutes torture, that it is the intended acts of those that continue to detain him, continue to refuse to provide him with adequate medical treatment that constitutes torture that could result in his death. So we are calling on the United Nations, we are calling on state parties that have an influence over these matters to ensure that Dr. Morsi is immediately and unequivocally released from custody and that he is provided with the medical care that he urgently requires. That is one of the very strongest recommendations that we can make. And of course, Dr. Morsi is one of 60,000. I've mentioned the case of the other two journalists. There are thousands that have disappeared. Torture is being practiced, as we've seen through the Human Rights Watch video, in every case. There are extrajudicial killings. We have also recently seen the very tragic events that happened in Egypt with an attack by the Islamic State, and the response was, as one would expect from Sisi, that he will respond with brute force. That is not how you re-establish the rule of law. That is not how you stamp out terrorism, as we have seen in many states. And I'll conclude with one remark from one of our most senior judges in the United Kingdom that came about as a terrorism case post-2011. When the United Kingdom tried to enact draconian laws that would hold individuals without charge for prolonged periods of time, Lord Hoffman stated in the House of Lords, as it was then our highest court, and I would just like to paraphrase the comments that he made. The threat to the life of the nation, in the sense of people living in accordance with its traditional laws and political values, comes not from terrorism, but from laws such as these. That is the true measure of what terrorism may achieve. It is for Parliament to decide whether to give terrorists a victory. And I think that's particularly important in the case of Egypt. What Egypt now needs is a strong leader, a strong democratic leader, who is democratically elected by the people of Egypt, not imposed by the international community, and not through a military coup. That is one of the most urgent needs that the international community needs to respond to. Without that, the chaos will continue, terrorist attacks will undoubtedly continue, and young, disaffected youth will continue to be drawn to extremist groups. And that is the real threat to the nation, and that is something that needs to be desperately addressed. We are at a stage where human rights protection and the role of the international community is at its lowest. We've already heard the catastrophic decision that was made by Trump yesterday, which I add my own voice, that it is an absolutely deplorable act that has nothing to do with peace and stability. But we also have the problem with dealing with crises around the world, and which, unfortunately, Egypt is only one part of. But let's not lose sight of the situation in Egypt while focusing on other situations, such as the Rohingya. All of these situations need to be given the same level of attention. As I've said, we're talking about thousands and thousands of civilians that have not participated in acts of violence. They are merely political opponents, and we need to urgently address that. Thank you very much.
I would just like to affirm one more time the report that was filed today regarding President Mohammed Morsi, the elected President of Egypt, the legal President of Egypt. And this was filed today by Mr. Toby Kádman, and I'd like you, Toby, just to affirm that again and who the report went to. Thank you. Yes, please.
Yes, I can confirm that this morning the petition was filed on behalf of Dr. Morsi by our legal team at Guernica 37. The report has been filed with the UN High Commissioner himself. It has also been filed with the UN Working Group on Arbitrary Detention, because our position is that Dr. Morsi continues to be arbitrarily detained. Of course, he has been detained as a result of court rulings, but when the trial process constitutes a flagrant denial of justice, as it does in this case, then any custody that stems from that is to be considered arbitrary. It has also been filed with the Special Rapporteur on Torture because of the withholding of medical care constitutes torture. It has also been filed with the Special Rapporteur on independence of judges because, in our view, the judges that have presided over his trial and many other trials lack the necessary independence and impartiality to be considered a court of law. And of course, we have filed with the Special Rapporteur on freedom of expression because many of Dr. Morsi's case, as with many of the other cases, relate as a result of political opinions. We will also be filing the a summary of that petition with a number of other bodies, such as the European Parliament and the European Union, with the UK government, and the US Congressional Tom Lantos Human Rights Commission that just yesterday held a session dealing with the deteriorating human rights situation in Egypt. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that summary, and I'll turn now to Ustaz Sandubi.
شكرا جزيلا. أنا بشكر كل السادة الأفاضل اللي وجهوا لي الدعوة للمشاركة في هذا المؤتمر الصحفي حوالين أوضاع حقوق الإنسان في مصر. وأنا بعتبر دي بداية لفتح جميع الأبواب والنوافذ لنقف جميعا أيا كانت توجهاتنا الفكرية أو السياسية موقف موحد في الدفاع عن حقوق الإنسان كقيمة في حد ذاتها بغض النظر عن قناعات كل شخص بآرائه السياسية أو الفكرية، لأنه لا يمكن لنا أن نتجاوز ما يحدث في مصر حاليا إلا بالإيمان بأن الإنسان في حد ذاته قيمة بغض النظر عما يقتنع به من أفكار. طبعا في البداية كلنا امبارح ما نمناش لأن كنا في حالة حزن وحالة قلق على قرار ترامب، لكن كما يقال رب ضارة نافعة. أوروبا لأول مرة امبارح، مش احنا بس، تكتشف من هو الإرهابي الحقيقي. الإرهابي الحقيقي اللي بيدفع المسلمين والعرب إلى أنهم ياخدوا مواقف متطرفة تجاه الغرب هو ترامب، مش المتطرفين فقط. وبالتالي أنا بعتقد أن العلاقة ما بين ترامب والسيسي تكشف أيضا ما يمارسه السيسي من إرهاب على الشعب المصري. نحن في ظل نظام سياسي يتجاوز كل الأوصاف والتسميات. no classification, no nomination. out. ليس انقلاب عسكري بالمعنى التقليدي، ليس حكم ديكتاتوري بالمعنى التقليدي، ليس انتهاكات لحقوق الإنسان بالمعنى التقليدي، لا، ده بيمارس أشياء لم تحدث منذ حتى نهاية آخر حكم عسكري في العالم في الأرجنتين اللي مارس سياسة الاختفاء القسري وسقط سنة 83. بيعيد ظاهرة الاختفاء القسري لتاريخ العالم اللي انتهت عمليا، وبيعيدها بشكل لا يمكن لأحد يتخيله. بيعيد ظاهرة ارتكاب جرائم، مش جرائم فردية، جرائم جماعية. بمعنى أننا في تصوراتي احنا ممكن نتكلم على سياسة أبارتهيد، بوليتيكال أبارتهيد، not ethnic أبارتهيد. هناك نوع من أنواع المنهجية والانتظام في ممارسة كل أشكال الانتهاكات لكل أبعاد الإنسان. حالة ريجيني تثبت هذه الحالة. حالة ريجيني تتضمن 3 أوصاف: تعرض لاختفاء قسري، تعرض للتعذيب، تعرض لقتل خارج القانون. وهذه القضايا ال3 هي المآسي الحقيقية اللي بيعيشها كل الشعب المصري حاليا. ولذلك لم يكن غريبا ان ريجيني قالت التعبير الشهير بتاعها ان هم تصوروا انه تعاملوا معاه كانه مصري، لانه فعلا ريجيني بقى مصري فعلا. وبالتالي هنا رفض السيسي للكشف عن قتلة ريجيني وده للأسف الشديد الذي لم تفهمه الحكومة الإيطالية، ولغاية الوقت في انتظار ان القاتل يقف قدام عيلة اللي قتله ويقول لهم انا اللي قتلته. السيسي والأجهزة الأمنية المصرية هي اللي ارتكبت الجريمة، وكل العالم يدرك هذا، لكن الاعتراف بجريمة ريجيني معناه عمليا فتح الملف لكل المصريين الذين تعرضوا للاختفاء القسري وللقتل خارج القانون وللتعذيب، وبالتالي لن يتم حل قضية ريجيني، لأن معناه أن الخيط ده يتفتح ويتمد لكل الحالات المصرية الأخرى. هنا في ظاهرة الإطار اللي أخطأت فيه الحكومة الإيطالية وأخطر فيه حتى كمان، واسمحوا لي أوجه نقد حتى لمنظمة العفو الدولية الفرع الإيطالي، الشعار اللي طلع لا فيريتا بالريجيني، الحقيقة من أجل الريجيني. الحقيقة عشان نكتشفها معناه ان القاتل يديك معلومات تثبت ان هو قتله. طب اذا كان القاتل لو اداك المعلومات دي هيبقى هو متهم، طب ازاي اداها لك؟ وبالتالي هنا فتح باب الانتظار قدام الرأي العام ان احنا منتظرين الحقيقة. طب الحقيقة هتظهر امتى؟ المفروض ان كان هذا الشعار يكون شعار محدد بوقت معين بزمن محدد، وفي حالة ان هو مش هيقدم القتلة بتاعت ريجيني يبقى بالتالي طبيعي جدا ان يبقى في قائمة اتهام مقابل ده. الحالة الثانية الخاصة هي حالة الاختفاء القسري. الاختفاء القسري في مصر تجاوز به السيسي كل ما كان يتوقعه اي واحد مننا. السيسي يتجاوز النموذج الارجنتيني في ممارسة الاختفاء القسري. أنا بعتبرها جريمة دولية وليست جريمة مصرية فقط. وهنا كل منظمات الدولية سواء في الأمم المتحدة فشلت تماما في مندوب السكرتير العام للأمم المتحدة لقضايا الاختفاء القسري، قدم للحكومة المصرية أكتر من مرة عشان يجي يزور مصر عشان يعرف ظاهرة الاختفاء القسري، تم رفض الطلب. ولما جه الأستاذ إبراهيم متولي رئيس ومنسق رابطة أسر ضحايا أسر الاختفاء القسري يسافر هنا ويجي جينيف عشان يعرض على مبعوثية الأمم المتحدة هنا الوضع بتاع الاختفاء القسري، منعه وقبض عليه في مطار القاهرة. وهنا السؤال اللي موجه للمجتمع الغربي، هل السيسي لم يتجاوز حتى الآن مرحلة الإدانة ويجب أن يتم بدء فرض عقوبات دولية عليه؟ لأنه أنا الراجل مش عاوز يتعامل مع أي حد، لا مع أمم متحدة ولا مع سفارات مصرية في سفارات أوروبية في مصر، ولا عاوز يستجيب لأي نداءات دولية ولا أي حاجة. طيب هنفضل ندين ولا بنطالب المجتمع الدولي ببدء فرض عقوبات اقتصادية على هذا النظام؟ أنا في توقعاتي إن احنا نحشد نفسنا لإقناع أكبر عدد ممكن من منظمات حقوق الإنسان في أوروبا، وأيضا بعض السفارات وبعض ممثلين الدول الأوروبية، بأن اتفاقية الشراكة المصرية الأوروبية مع مصر يجب أن يعاد النظر فيها طالما عملية انتهاكات حقوق الإنسان حتى الآن لم يتم إيقافها أو حتى التخفيف منها. وأعتقد الأوروبيين دلوقتي واعيين كويس جدا إن فكرة محاربة الإرهاب بأن السلطة تمارس الإرهاب ضد المواطنين أصبحت نظرية بالية وأصبحت مكشوفة. هو بيمارس الإرهاب ضدنا لمنعنا أصلا من التعبير عن الحرية. ولذلك أنا بعتبر أن القضيتين الاختفاء القسري وقضية ريجيني هم في جوهرهم بيعكسوا جوهر نظام خارج عن كل التوصيفات المتعارف عليها بالكامل. وأنا أعتقد أن أوروبا تتحمل مسؤولية سياسية خطيرة في دفاعها عن قيم حقوق الإنسان وفي نفس الوقت بترتبط بهذا النظام السياسي الفاشي اللي بيمارس كل هذه الانتهاكات، بل بيتم عمل معاه زيارات والى اخره. وشكرا جزيلا لكم.
شكرا.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for Geneva Club Press and for Egyptian Revolutionary Council for convening this a very important conference about crisis in Egypt. Egypt now is experiencing a worst human rights violations in its modern history. In the beginning, I will introduce myself because I think it's very related about what I was talking about. My name is Abdurrahman Ez. I used to work in Egypt as a TV presenter and news reporter, and as well, unfortunately, as a photographer. Why unfortunately? Because when you work as a photographer in Egypt, you considered as a target for police and for security officers. Working as a photographer in Egypt, even as a journalist, is a very dangerous job these days. In January 2011, when youth took the streets and brought down Mubarak regime, I was there as well. I was doing my job and also try express my voice against this brutal regime. On 28th of January, on the town near to Tahrir Square, I do believe you remember these days. I was there, and I have been shooted in my right eye with a brutal police officer, and the pellet is still inside my eye right now while I'm speaking. This is a very good symbol, but there is more worse than this. There is many of journalists lost their lives because just doing their job. Try to say the truth. Try to bring the information, or just try to transfer people demands and dreams. After days after the first elected president or elections in our history of Egypt, when Muhammad Morsi came in power, after just 1 year, the army came again and they killed our dreams of freedom, of independence, of justice. People against military coup, they were in streets for 48 days and just protest peacefully against this brutal regime, brutal military coup. And in the fourth eighth day, and 14th of August 2013, there was a massacre. It's called Rab'a. Why? Why it's massacre? Because it's this day, in 6 hours, the regime and the police under the rule of Abdel Fattah al-Sisi killed more than 1,000 citizens, peaceful protests, including whatever exists in this place and this time. In this place, I lost many of my friends, even political activists or journalists. And this day, remember this day, in this day, 14th of August, I lost my friend, Habiba Abdelaziz. She was a journalist in Galvin News. She shot it in her head directly from a sniper. I lost Mus'ab Shami. And my colleague in my TV, Ahmed Abdel Jawad, he was correspondent and he was killed. And there is another person, another journalist, he was a correspondent from Sky News, who was called Dean. Dean worked in several and many countries with very dangerous places like Libya or crisis in Palestine. But where and when he killed? He killed in Egypt in this day, 14 of August 2013. We don't have war. We don't have a civil war. We just have a military coup. While I'm talking in front of you now, I'm a political refugee in UK. Why? Because in the same reason. Because you can't work in Egypt. There is 14 TV shut down after military coup. There are more than 250 journalists has been arrested after military coup till this moment that while I'm talking now. While we are here, there is 89 journalists in jail with a very, very bad conditions. There is no medical treatment. There is no proper medical treatment. There is no justice trial. I will just give an example for this. There's Ismail Iskandarani. He is a journalist writing and speaking about the developments in Sinai. Ismail Iskandarani has been arrested or detained in November 29th of 2015, and he remained in jail till now. Not just this, we're talking about a worst conditions, a worst behaviors from this proto-regime. Even there's become, and we're talking about, we talk the streets and people talk the streets against Mubarak regime. Now this regime is more brutal, is more worse than Mubarak regime. Mubarak regime remains in the power for 30 years. But this regime committed crimes in just in 4 years more than what's committed in 30 years while under Mubarak rule. This regime arrested one of human rights defenders, Ibrahim Metwalli. Ibrahim Metwalli, who was a co-founder association in September, as he was about to board a flight to here, to Geneva. Why? To present the UN Human Rights Council with a file on enforced disappearance in Egypt, including his son, Omar, who was disappearing from 4 years ago. Let's talk about worst and worst. Extrajudicial executions. I lost my friend, Omar. He just was a student, studied in Malaysia. While just he come back to Egypt to meet his family, to visit his country, and to go back to his study, he was killed, murdered. First, disappearance, because there is a very close connection between disappearance, forced disappearance, and extrajudicial executions. His family just lost him, tried to report his disappearance, and 10 days later, they found his footage from Minister of Interior, spread his footage with his friends, with others, and he shot it in his eye from zero space. Mahmoud Hussein, he is a journalist in Al Jazeera. He just go back to his country to visit his family, and he intends to go back to his job in Qatar, which is where he's based. He was detained from 1 year now. Why? Just because he's a journalist. This is what's happening now in Egypt. I do believe that international society, the people who are concerned about freedom of expression, freedom of express, they have to show a serious concerns about what's happening now for journalists. There is no different voices. There's just one voice. the intelligence, and the regime controlled all the media just to protect who is in power, who is Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, the leader of military coup who become a president by elections, which the free society, the free world, the Western world recognize him, recognize his regime. Really shame. It's really shame. Before, when I was young, I heard about democracy and the freedom. Yes, we can. Obama's slogan and his campaign. So we said in Egypt, yes, we can as well. We pro-democracy, we pro-freedom. We need peace, we need justice. And we dreamed and we got it. We brought Mubarak down by peaceful demonstrations, by blogging, by go to social media and expressing our opinions. And then this is what happened after military coup. So where the free world? Where the people who concerns about the freedom of expression, the freedom of press, the freedom of protest? Nothing. Just recognize this regime, support this regime by weapons, by money, by even relationship, by covering his crimes. Ibrahim Halawa, he was here now, and he was in jail for 4 years in just a pre-trial. Nothing to do, just they punish him, and even more than 60,000 people like Ibrahim since 4 years in jail with a very bad conditions. In Jan 2017, which security officer, because they deny that there is a crime there, they deny everything. Just we talking like from nothing. They deny that if you go to regime, they deny everything. So I was just talking about one example and then finish my word. In Jan 2017, which security officers or armed men operating murdered suspects in their custody. An incident staged for video as shootcuts with quote-unquote terrorists, in which the murdered turned out to have been disappeared into custody month earlier. This was happened in Sinai, like my friend Omar when he's killed. We just need peace. We need justice. We need to live as any human live in your world. It isn't enough to simply talking about democracy and freedom and justice when we must believe in it. And also it is not enough to just believe in it. We need to work on it. Together, we need to work in justice and freedom. We request now immediately release of 89 journalists and more than 60,000 political activists. They are jailed in Egypt from 4 years since the military coup in July 2013. We will work on this together. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Abdurrahman Aiz, for that testimony. And now if I'd like to turn to Ibrahim Halawa and to give him a very special welcome and to say how we all waited for this day in order to have him free from Egypt's prisons and to be able to speak out. Welcome to Ibrahim.
First of all, I just want to thank you all for organizing this, and thank you, Dr. Maha, for having me today to testimony on what's going on in Egypt. But if you were to give me all the time to speak about prison and the conditions and the bad conditions that's happening in Egypt, I still wouldn't do it justice, because what I've seen over 4 years, I was still seeing more and more every day of torture and of violation to human rights in Egypt, and the case and how it's and how worse it's getting, and it's not getting any better. Of course, I was imprisoned first of all with me and my 3 sisters and about 494 other people. We were taken from Al-Fath Mosque 2 days after the Rab'a massacre, which of course they were intending to kill us, but they didn't do so because for media purposes. But we were arrested and we were taken to a military camp, which by Egyptian law is illegal. So that was the first time, the law with us was broken, that we were arrested in a military camp. And a lot of people who are who are disappearing illegally as well have been disappearing into military camps, and one of the worst military camps in Egypt is Al-Azuli, as everyone hears about, and it's where they practice their torture. Of course, I've went through one of the worst judicial systems I've ever seen in my life. 4 years of postponements. I was postponed about 34 times without trial at all, without a judge hearing me. A judge heard me for the first time after 4 years. I was beaten, I was sexually harassed, I was beaten with metal chains, and of course I've seen worse conditions of torture in prison with me. People who were disappeared, who were considered disappeared for a long time, they would later send them on from Al-Azuli where their parents won't know they were arrested, and they would come to prison and they would have patches of skin torn from them. So it was either they were electrocuted, or either by fire, or either by many elements that they have that they are practicing up to this day. If we were to speak about many topics about the torture and about the judicial system, you can speak so much about each one that you will not end upon. So I will just briefly speak about some of the conditions in prison, and then I will just speak about the political part in Egypt a bit, and the effect it has on the prisoners. Of course, my sisters, when they stayed 4 months in prison, they seen the other side of the female prisons in Egypt, which also, they were a lot of female prisoners up to this day who are legally detained and who have been sentenced with the death sentence with no trial and no witnesses and no evidence to this day. So, by any law in the world, that's illegal. A person is proven innocent until he is proven otherwise, But in Egypt, apparently there's this law where we can keep you up to 2 years, which is also people try to work by the Egyptian law for them to release the people who have been 4 years illegally detained, for them to release the people who have, who with the 2-year law, but yet the Egyptian law doesn't even practice its own law. The Egyptian system doesn't even practice its own law. So, of course, it's a dictator ruling right now in Egypt, and I don't expect any good from it, and I don't expect any justice from it, because otherwise he wouldn't have, made a coup on an officially elected president. People differ politically, and it's their right. We're not always saying that that Morsi has to be the president of Egypt. We're saying if you differed with Morsi, Dr. Morsi, if you differed with him, that you use the ballot box to get rid of him from the seat. You don't have to use a military coup and kill people and burn bodies. But what we are saying, we are pro-democracy and pro-freedom of speech, which is being violated in Egypt at the moment, and we are. Like Abdurrahman Aziz said, we are back further than square one. So we went back further than Mubarak's days. Of course, I just want to say, Abdurrahman Aziz, welcome, to here, because he's a very famous name in prison that they really want him. They so want him over there, and they would try anything to get their hands on him. And there's a lot of people like that around the world who have done nothing more than simply talked about expressing their freedom and their expression of their right of expression. And everywhere I go, I say this, even around Ireland and every media I go on, I say that democracy was not only made for Europe. Democracy was made for any human being to live upon and to practice the right in any place they go. It's not illegal to protest in another country, and it's not illegal to give your right in another country. I was an Irish citizen. I was born and and I lived my whole life in Ireland, and it's my home. That's where I was raised. But when I went to extended family in Egypt to participate with people for calling upon democracy, I did nothing illegal, yet I was detained 4 years for it with no judicial system. No evidence was proven against me, and after 4 years I was proven innocent with the corrupt judicial system. Not that I say that the Egyptian judicial system is right, but after by 4 years for them to prove me innocent was one of the biggest, of course, surprises for me, that okay, they said they had to let go of me, which also I feel that there was a political interference with it. Conditions in prison, there's many different prisons in Egypt, and there's many, it's not one unified rule in Egyptian prisons. So if I'm in one prison, I will go to another prison and I will find different rules, simply because the officer in charge is the one who sets the rules and not the Minister of Interior. They say that, they've had human rights to visit the prisons, and we've always seen the human rights when they're visiting the prison. We are always isolated in the part where the human rights would never visit us. The human rights would be also gone. They will go to a place where it's clean. They will put flowers and set up trees before it by day. They will clean the prison. They will paint it very well. The human rights organizations would come and visit the prison, and they would see the beautiful section of the prison. They would have convicted prisoners who are informants who work with the Egyptian police in prisons, who would go outside and play football in front of the cameras, just for them to say that, look, oh, we have beautiful prisons and beautiful places. Even if you have the most beautiful prisons in the world, yet you illegally detain people, which is not right. Taking someone's freedom for no reason is simply not right to begin with. So for them to, portray that they have the most prisons in Egypt is not any way justifiable for them to imprison people. There's cells, like you were, Doctor, you were talking about. There's people who are dying in prisons, and I've seen that with my own eyes. That one guy needed an injection because he was just sick and he needed an injection, and he was given the wrong injection and he died. Not only I'm speaking about that this was political prisoners, I've also seen convicted prisoners who are dying simply just because they were put in a room with sick people they weren't meant to be put in. So they went into the room and they caught onto the disease, and later on they died. All of this is violation to human rights. We're not only saying human rights applies upon political prisoners, it applies upon any human. So for me, what I've seen also happen to the convicted criminals in Egypt is also illegal to any human rights. Cells are 5 meters, 5 meters and a half by 3 meters and a half. It would have one toilet, and you would have about from 30 to 35 people in a cell, which everyone would sleep about roughly in a 30 centimeter space. Of course, you all had to use one toilet. You were denied access to recess. You were denied access to family visits for a long time. I visited Wire for about a year and a half, which was separated from my family for about a year and a half. I didn't get to see them face to face. There's a lot of prisons, like a Scorpion prison as well, which is one of the biggest violated prisons to human rights in Egypt. And it is widely known as a corrupt prison in Egypt. Of course, there's many. I was luckily to have my sisters work on my behalf. A lot of people supporting my case. I had MEPs like Lim Boylan, who is a MEP as well, and my lawyer Dara Mackin, who worked very hard on my case. But also, what I'm saying is that if it wasn't for a lot of people getting behind my case, like human rights organizations, Amnesty International and Reprieve, who said I should be released as a prisoner of conscience, there's still thousands of prisoners that are left behind that no one yet knows about, and no one hears their story about, and no one even considers of asking for their freedom, because simply I'm released and that's it. The case is over. But in fact, the case is not over, because it's deteriorating in Egypt very bad right now at the moment. The impact of what the political conflict in Egypt is, it's a coup, and anything that happens politically in Egypt is backfired right upon the prisoners straight away. So if anything happens in Egypt that Abdel Fattah al-Sisi doesn't like, all he does is goes into the cells of the prisoners and he starts, not him of course, by himself, but I mean all the officers under him, they go into the cells and they start beating us and they start torturing us for no reason. So also, the cells I've seen people. What happened to us is we were stripped naked. We were beaten with metal chains. Like I said, our heads were shaved, and we were denied access to medical care for a very, very long time. The doors wouldn't open, and diseases would start to occur in the cells, and yet no treatment we would get. Hunger strikes were a way of opposing the Egyptian system, but yet when you have the prosecutors who are working hand in hand with the police officers and the ministers of interior to design the papers to make it seem that there's nothing happening to me or to whoever who went on a hunger strike was also illegal. Of course, like I want to say that when I went on a hunger strike, I was put in solitary confinement for them to make me break my hunger strike, and over there I met a guy who literally had an argument with another guy in his cell, and from that moment the officer kept beating him up because that other guy he had an argument with was an informant who worked with the police. So the officer started to beat up the guy, and then the guy, after such hard beatings, lost his eyesight. He was thrown into solitary confinement for them to bring the prosecution office and say that it was his fault for him to be, blinded. He was the one who's put himself in trouble at the first place, so he shouldn't have put himself in that spot. So it's easily designed papers that they work upon to use and to portray that there's nothing happening in Egypt, which is also a corrupt system. And the European countries in the European Parliament and the UN and America also have to know, and I think a lot of people know by now what's going on in Egypt, and I think the best way for that to be resolved, the political conflict and like the coup to be the dictator to be taken out of his seat, Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, which I don't even like mentioning his name because I don't want to give him that attention. The political countries, the European countries have to put political pressure and stop the aid that's given to Egypt. Directly, there's some aid given upon the judicial system, there's some aid given upon the prisoners, there's some aid given upon Egypt itself. So for me it was very critical when I was in prison that I would go out to the European countries and just tell them, please stop giving the aid to Egypt, because when I was released when Ireland, the parliament delegation of the Irish parliament delegation came to visit Egypt, and they visited me in prison, and they said to Egypt that we will not move further with any connections with the two countries until Ibrahim is released. And later on, a few months later, I was released and I was proven innocent. So what I'm saying is that if they cut the connections with Egypt, that's when really we will have a solving problem that we can talk about right then, and bring a democratically elected president back to his seat. So people always say that in Europe that they want to stop terrorism. Well, what I'm saying is Abdel Fattah al-Sisi is causing, and he is creating, and he's manufacturing prisons. He's manufacturing terrorists behind bars in the Egyptian prisons, because they are people who are innocent in their lives and they are seeking revenge, and they think that by Europe aiding a dictator who is clearly a dictator for anyone, and who doesn't see that is clearly blind. So for them to say that we have to get revenge on the European countries because they aid what happens in Egypt is also wrong. But what I'm saying is, if the Europeans want to stop the terrorism, they have to stop the system of the dictatorship that's going on in Egypt, and they have to solve the problem in Egypt as soon as possible, because Egypt can turn into a war zone like any other country that turned into a war zone, and then only then I think the European countries will start to sit, and the UN will start to sit to solve what's going on in Egypt officially. So why do we have to reach that stage to start solving officially what's going on in Egypt when we know what's going to happen if he continues on in his seat? So I think it should be solved with the pressure on the European countries, and that's a role I will play from my perspective from now on. And thank you so much for having me again.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ibrahim. As you speak out, you're not speaking only about your own testimony, but I think you're speaking out for all the prisoners in Egypt. And I urge you to continue to do so.
Thank you.
I'm going to make an exception. Abdurrahman Izz wants to say something about the protest laws, but you've got about 30 seconds.
I just want to give an example for what's happening to journalists. I will go to protest law before this. There is a journalist, a girl called Asma Zidan. She just detained now and accused by humiliate the president. Why? Because she writes a post in Facebook. You imagine yourself as a journalist and write something in Facebook and you jailed because of that, nothing, just because you humiliate the president. Regarding to the protest law, effectively it's impossible under this law to go to protest against the regime. Because of this protest of law, there is thousands of political young people, activists, jailed since 2015 after this law become in power. As well, the anti-terrorism law defines terrorism in such sweeping terms to include speech, writing, and other peaceful behaviors or actions. This law they use this law, anti-terrorism law, to threaten journalists and political activists from do anything against the regime, and they detain many of people who have nothing to do with the terrorism. Thank you.
تمام، أنا لسه ما خلصناش لو سمحت. طيب 30 ثانية برضه لو سمحت.
أنا بس كنت عاوز أذكركم بحاجة يعني على المستوى الشخصي إن يعني الأستاذ إبراهيم متولي المحامي كان المفروض يجي هنا جينيف وإحنا جينا وهو ما عرفش يجي يعني اتقبض عليه في المطار. فأتمنى إن إحنا، لأن أنا على المستوى الشخصي يعني تربطني بيه علاقة قوية جدا، لأن إحنا أسسنا مع بعض رابطة أسر المختفين قسريا، وقررنا ناخد نقابة الصحفيين مقر ليها، لأن كان في استحالة إن إحنا ناخد مقر خارج النقابة، لأن كان ممكن يتقبض عليهم كلهم. فبالتالي كنا بنجتمع في النقابة وبنعمل وقفات على سلم النقابة، وكل اجتماعاتنا كانت موجودة، وأنا عضو في النقابة، فده كان مسهل الموضوع لحد ما. أنا عاوز بس يا دكتورة لو نقدر النهاردة نوجه له نداء خاص ونقول له يعني احنا برضو يعني موجودين اهو في جينيف، عاوزين نعمل اللي نفسك كنت نفسك انت تقدر تعمله، لأن أنا أعتقد إن ده هيرفع من الروح المعنوية وهيديله إحساس بإن احنا لسه فاكرينه. شكرا جزيلا.
شكرا لحضرتك، وندائنا لكل الأحرار في مصر، ندائنا ليهم جميعا إن احنا مش هنسكت، احنا هنرفع صوتنا في كل مكان. والنهاردة يعني ده نموذج لخطوة بسيطة هنستمر. احنا استمرنا في الفترة الأخيرة بعد الانقلاب وصوتنا بيقوى، والمصريين بيجتمعوا ضد المنظومة العسكرية، واحنا بكل يعني الخلفيات المختلفة السياسية هنجتمع لنسقط هذا النظام اللي مسؤول عن الانتهاكات. فللأحرار في الداخل احنا معاكم، احنا صدى لصوتكم، احنا صدى لكفاحكم ضد هذه المنظومة، وحاجز الخوف هينكسر بإذن الله قريبا، ومصر هتنتفض وهتنادي بالحرية وبالاستقلال من هذه المنظومة العسكرية بإذن الله تعالى. دعوني أرجع مرة أخرى يعني للمؤتمر بشكل مختصر. Let me please return one more time, and I hope we can just try to close the proceedings now. let me say we have a number, and this is quite important, a number of requests that the different delegations connected to this press conference will be putting to in the meetings that will be taking place over the next couple of days. These requests are going to are put forward to the international community as a whole, to the United Nations Human Rights Council, and also to the Office of the High Commissioner. Let me just highlight very quickly a few of the requests that we are making. The first is to take immediate and tangible action in order to implement the recommendations of the United Nations Committee Against Torture and to urgently review the recommendations previously rejected, such as the immediate abolition of solitary confinement. Number two, to demand that President Morsi be released immediately from detention due to his ill health and receive all necessary medical care from independent physicians. Three, the establishment of an independent investigative authority under the auspices of the UN Special Procedures Branch to investigate allegations of torture, ill treatment, enforced disappearances, and extrajudicial executions. Four, to create an enabling environment for human rights organizations to provide legal and medical support for victims of torture and other forms of ill treatment in detention. Five, to grant regular access to independent civil society organizations working in the field of health rights to improve medical care and support in prisons. Six, demand that Egypt comply with international standards, put an immediate end to the practice of torture and ill treatment in all places of detention, end solitary confinement in violation of the standard minimal rules for prisoners, Mandela rules, and ensure prompt, impartial, and full investigation into all allegations of torture and ill treatment. We have 18 requests. I've only read 6. I leave the one regarding the Rome Statute to Toby, please.
The 18 recommendations that are being made are principally to the relevant bodies of the United Nations. However, there are 2 separate requests, recommendations or demands that are being made to Egypt as well. One of them is to immediately ratify the Rome Statute of the International Criminal Court. If Sisi considers, as he does, that he has not committed any criminal offences and any institution under his command are not responsible for these crimes, then they have nothing to fear from the International Criminal Court investigating those matters. That's an important recommendation to make. It's certainly in line with what Egypt themselves said at the recent Human Rights Council session relating to the Rohingya. The second recommendation, which relates to a legal position, is the immediate adoption of the optional protocol to the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. That will enable Egyptians, such as the 2 very brave gentlemen on the panel today, to petition the UN Human Rights Committee against Egypt for acts of torture. That is an important protection against human rights abuse that most countries have recognized. Egypt needs to recognize that, and it needs to adopt that optional protocol immediately.
Thank you, Toby. As I bring the meeting to a close, I'd like to thank our panelists, each and every one of them, for their very important contributions. We will continue to speak out. And let me add one more word regarding the atrocities that are happening in Egypt and the need for the international organizations to speak out and pressure in every way they can. This is not a country to do business with. This is not a regime to do business with. What we're seeing in Egypt today was described by the panelists, and I use their words, as crimes against humanity, systematic abuse and violation of rights in a way that is continuing and persistent and systematic. I use the word systematic because it has been used by international organizations such as Human Rights Watch, and what is happening today in Egypt is not an act that happened in the last few years. It is continuing, it is consistent, it is escalating, and it is leading to instability and insecurity for every Egyptian citizen, and the repercussions of this are grave for the region and the world. The international community and organizations that are present here in Geneva need to act now against this vile regime of General Sisi. Otherwise, the Egyptian people will find that there is a complicity between the countries that remain silent and the acts that are taking place in their country against their innocent citizens. Thank you very much for coming today, and we will continue, as I say, to raise our voices for Egypt and for the rights and freedoms of all in Egypt and the region. Thank you very much indeed.